Alright, welcome back everybody. This is going to be the top 8 of the Independence, Missouri Midseason Showdown. So the match we're about to see is going to be Ethan Simpson versus Matthew Carter. Both of these players coming out of the St. Louis area. We've seen both of them on stream already today, but it's going to be really exciting to watch what they have for each other. For those of you who don't know, Ethan has competed at the World Championships for 2016 and 2017, playing in Day 1. And Matt Carter has been around for a long time. I do believe he played at Worlds in 14. I'm not sure. I know he won a regional. He's always a force to be reckoned with. He's taken a bit of a break due to being a dad, because he's a good dad like that. But you know, anytime he's at an event, you know he's going to put up a good show. So this is going to be really exciting. We're going to jump into team preview and see what these two have for us right now. So on the left, you'll see PacoTaco's team, Ethan Simpson's team, rather, which consists of Tapu, Koko, Garchomp, Salamence, Whimsicott, Celesteela, and a lowland form of Persian. On the right side, you see Matt Carter's team, which consists of Mimikyu, Garchomp, Pheromosa, Butterfree, Arcanine, and Salazzle. So both of these players have a fake-out user in Salazzle and Alolan Persian. We do know that Matt's Salazzle is a little bit more offensive than most Persians tend to be, based on what we saw of him earlier today during Swiss. The other thing that stands out as an odd choice to a lot of people is this Butterfree. Butterfree has a lot of support moves in its move pool, including Tailwind, Sleep Powder, and Rage Powder. And so a lot of people look at it and they're like, okay, but it basically does what Smeargle can do, just a little bit worse, because Smeargle can use Tailwind, can use Follow Me, which is a little bit better than Rage Powder, and also use Spore, which has better accuracy than Sleep Powder. So why did Matt pick this Butterfree? And the main reason is because Butterfree, having that flying type, it gives it an immunity to ground, and since Garchomp has been so ubiquitous this year, it's always good to include a ground resist or a ground immunity in a team. And so I imagine that's what Matt had in mind when he added the Butterfree to his team. And so we see Ethan leads with Tapu, Koko, and Whimsicott versus Matt's Butterfree and Salazzle. So Salazzle threatens both of Ethan's Pokemon right now with a Sludge Bomb. Being able to hit that fairy typing for super effective damage is going to be huge. Whimsicott, we know from Ethan's earlier stream match, does have Tailwind, and we also know that the opposing Butterfree could utilize Tailwind as well. So we could see a Tailwind mirror here. However, Butterfree could go for something else. It could go for a Rage Powder to kind of try and protect that Salazzle from taking any damage. Salazzle could go for a Fake Out into Whimsicott. That way you get an uncontested Tailwind that you don't have to, you know, just match Tailwinds. You could Fake Out the Whimsicott and just have the Tailwind advantage right away. So we do see that Tapu Koko goes ahead and protects as the Fake Out goes into the Whimsicott slot. So this is a free turn for Matt, and the Fake Out deals a decent amount of damage, and it does break a potential Focus Sash that could be on Whimsicott. And we see Matt go straight for the offensive, hitting Whimsicott with a Air Slash, so he just gets a free KO there and takes no damage besides Life Orb recoil in return. So that's a really, really good turn for Matt, and Ethan's going to be playing from behind right from the start. Now, Ethan does decide to bring in his Garchomp. Now, Garchomp is going to be able to get around that Butterfree's potential use of Rage Powder by just going for an Earthquake. You can't redirect Earthquake. We will see if Matt plays into it. If he tries to protect or switch out his Salazzle, wouldn't be a bad thing to do, because it would give him the opportunity to reset Fake Out, bring it in at a later point. And of course, he could just think, oh, I'm probably faster, maybe I can hit it with a hidden power of the Ice type and just KO it before it can hit me. So no, Matt's not falling for any of those tricks. He goes ahead, he pulls out his Salazzle into his own Garchomp. Meanwhile, Ethan goes ahead and he pulls out his Celesteela, or he pulls out his Tapu Koko into Celesteela, and he just goes for a Rock Slide. So even though he switched to his own Celesteela to have the ground immunity, he decided Rock Slide was the move he wanted to click right now. And Butterfree does go down to its Focus Sash, but because it doesn't flinch to Rock Slide, which is always a threat, it is able to set up a Tailwind. So that is going to give Matt a speed advantage despite the Choice Scarf on this Garchomp. He is going to have the speed advantage thanks to the +2 speed from Tailwind. Now, one thing that's important to note here is that Celesteela is mildly threatened by the threat of Sleep Powder. Grounded Pokemon currently cannot be put to sleep due to the electric terrain, which is one thing that I think Ethan was really counting on to help counter the sleep that Butterfree would like to spam. However, because Celesteela is not grounded, it will actually be, like, it can be put to sleep. So Matt goes for the double Protect, potentially trying to bait out the Protect from Ethan's Celesteela. But that's a... and maybe trying to verify whether or not it's Scarf Garchomp, because at this point, you know, if you're not locked into a move, maybe you want to protect in front of the opposing Garchomp so you don't have to take the damage. So that could have just been a chance to try and scout for moves. Now, Matt goes for the Z ground into the Garchomp slot, I imagine, which is going to deal a lot of damage to Ethan's Garchomp. So we're going to see this Tectonic Rage going into Garchomp, and we'll see if Ethan's Garchomp is able to hold on and come back and get an attack off this turn. And it does. It survives with just 4 HP, but this Air Slash does connect and is going to be enough to finish off the Garchomp. So that leaves us 2 turns of Tailwind have been burnt, with Tapu Koko coming back on the field. And Tapu Koko does not want to face down this Garchomp under Tailwind. So Matt is really pressing his advantage here. He's got one more turn of Tailwind. He definitely wants to try and capitalize on it here. You know, Celesteela's just burned its Protect, so he's most likely, you know, looking at, well, if Koko's going to Protect, at least I can put the Celesteela to sleep, threaten it that way. But we're going to have to see if Ethan has a way to hit that Garchomp. We do know that his Tapu Koko is running a physical set. Which is quite unique, I guess. And so Matt decides to switch out his Butterfree, bring in Salazzle, and so that really helps. That's a really smart play because he's able to burn the Protect. You know, he anticipates Protect from Ethan to survive the attack from Garchomp this turn. And so now, while Tapu Koko has the speed advantage in front of that Garchomp, he's already burned the Protect, and Salazzle threatens the Fake Out, and so he's still going to be able to, Matt will still be able to buy himself another turn to attack into that Tapu Koko with the Garchomp, which is going to be able to deal quite a bit of damage to it. That Poison Jab will be super effective going into Tapu Koko. If he goes for an Earthquake, it'll also be super effective, but that would damage his own Salazzle, so probably not something he wants to go for. But that will leave Celesteela free to get an attack off. I don't think it's going to be enough to KO the Salazzle, but if it is, we could still see ourselves in this game. So Salazzle does go for the Fake Out into Tapu Koko as Garchomp goes for a Poison Jab also into Tapu Koko. However, Tapu Koko survives that with a decent amount of health remaining. However, unfortunately, the Leech Seed into the Garchomp slot did miss, which is really unfortunate for Ethan. Because that's going to prevent him from getting some passive damage going off on Garchomp, you know, each turn, which was going to be very important. So now we still see this Tapu Koko is threatening the Salazzle slot, and Celesteela isn't worried about Garchomp. You know, in a 1v1, Celesteela can handle Garchomp just fine. So Ethan's definitely probably looking to taking out the other Pokemon that Matt has in order to set up his Celesteela for the end game. So we do see Garchomp going for the Protect, not wanting to take damage, as Sludge Bomb goes into Tapu Koko, and this is going to give Matt the chance to Heavy Slam into the Salazzle, and it's just not enough to pick up the KO. So Salazzle hangs on with a sliver of HP, and that is going to be huge. If Ethan was able to eliminate the Salazzle this turn, he would have been in a much better position to start dealing damage to Matt in later turns. However, because he wasn't, Tapu Koko is still going to have to deal with that and is still threatened by this Garchomp. So we do see Matt going ahead and switching out his Salazzle into Butterfree, which goes down to a U-turn. I do imagine we're going to see an Earthquake coming out here. Yeah, it makes sense. Switch in your ground immunity to be able to fire off an Earthquake. So that is going to eliminate the Tapu Koko. However, Celesteela is going to get a chance to either do some damage or put some Leech Seeds on this Garchomp. You know, maybe start wearing it down. So one thing we have seen is that Matt's Salazzle is a Life Orb variant. That means its fire type attacks, if it has a Flamethrower or an Overheat or a Heat Wave or any sort of fire type attack, it's going to be dealing a lot of damage to Celesteela. Now, its Salazzle has very low HP, so it's going to go down to its own Life Orb recoil after attacking the Celesteela, but if it's able to do enough damage that Garchomp can clean up the game, or whatever Matt's fourth Pokemon is can clean up the game, it's not going to matter that it goes down. So while Celesteela always has a chance, Celesteela can take games just by bulking out the opponent and you know, using Leech Seed to passively beat the opponent. He is going to be facing a lot of damage from the Salazzle. Now, this Flamethrower does connect with the Pheromosa and is just barely not enough to pick up the KO. That's a really, really unfortunate survival, because if he could pick up the KO, if Ethan's Celesteela is trained in such a way to boost its special defense off of the Beast Boost, that could have put him in a position where he could take the attack from Salazzle and be able to move on. However, because he didn't pick up a KO, he's going to be in a little bit of trouble, and also he is facing two Pokemon that are going to be able to deal a lot of damage. So we do see the Pheromosa go for a U-turn, doesn't want to risk firing a high jump kick into a Protect and just KOing itself for no reason. So the U-turn was definitely a good move to make there. As so the U-turn does connect. That's going to deal minimal damage to Celesteela, but it does get some chip. It definitely helps put in range, you know, in case this is a damage roll from the Salazzle. So U-turn goes, and Garchomp is coming back into this slot. As the Overheat does connect, will it be enough to pick up the KO? Celesteela does faint. Sorry, I had a little bit of lag with the frames. I thought he was left with 8 HP. So Salazzle is able to pick up the KO on the Celesteela with that Overheat. It goes down itself, but at the end of the day, Matt takes home the win for Game 1. So now we're going to jump into team preview for Game 2 of this best of 3 set. Ethan definitely wanting to figure out how he can beat this team. We are in the elimination stages, so losing this game means he's out of the tournament. Matt sitting comfortably, you know, he's like, I just need to win one more. He definitely wants to take it now. He doesn't want to play, you know, the stress of a game 3. So they're both obviously looking to win. A lot on the line here, trying to stay in the tournament, you know, to make a deep run, to get some early CP for this season. So both players obviously evaluating, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what can I do differently, you know, to beat my opponent. So I think what Ethan wants to do is maybe not lose the Tailwind War early on. Losing that Whimsicott on turn 1 really cost him, because once Tailwind went up on Matt's side of the field, he had no way to respond. He had nothing that was going to be faster than Matt's Pokemon under Tailwind, and so that was a tough thing for him to overcome. So I'm sure Matt recognized that, and he's like, if I can set Tailwind, if I can keep the speed control, if I can move first and deal a lot of damage to Ethan's Pokemon, I'll be in good shape. And so Ethan's like, I got to figure out a way to stop that and use my own Pokemon so they can play to their strengths rather than trying to play defensively. So we're jumping into turn 1 here, and Ethan chooses to lead with Persian and Tapu Koko. Meanwhile, Matt felt like he had a good enough advantage with Butterfree and Salazzle, so go ahead, they worked well in game 1, why wouldn't they work well in game 2? Now, Persian does threaten the fake out here. However, Salazzle is faster and would be able to fake out Persian in return, or quicker than Persian could fire off the fake out to buy that turn. However, if that's what Matt chooses to do, that does leave Tapu Koko free to fire off an attack into either one of these Pokemon, and Tapu Koko would be able to deal quite a bit of damage to both of them. They're both very frail Pokemon. Butterfree would be taken down to its sash. Salazzle likely knocked out from the Tapu Koko attack. So Ethan deciding he doesn't want Tapu Koko on the field right now, instead going out to Garchomp. As the Salazzle does go for a fake out into the Garchomp slot, not into the Tapu or into what was the Tapu Koko slot. So between the Life Orb recoil and the Rough Skin, Salazzle takes, you know, right around 25% damage, and Ethan goes for the fake out into the Butterfree, which breaks its Focus Sash, which is very important. That means a Rock Slide will be able to KO Butterfree, as well as it prevents Tailwind from coming up. So right now, Garchomp is the fastest thing on the field. It will be able to fire off a powerful attack. You know, it could Earthquake to get rid of the Salazzle. It could just Rock Slide to deal a lot of damage, and it does look like he's going for the Rock Slide. You know, this will be a super effective attack into Salazzle, and it is enough to pick up the KO, and so that's a huge KO because Salazzle was able to deal a lot of damage to Ethan's team last game. It's really, really huge that he's able to pick up that KO and just get it off the field, so maybe, you know, he's got a better chance of using like his Celesteela to wall out the rest of this game. So in comes Pheromosa. Now, we do know that Pheromosa is not holding a Focus Sash because that is taken up by the Butterfree. However, Pheromosa, it has all the moves at its disposal. It could one-hit KO either one of Ethan's Pokemon right now, and it is capable of surviving a Rock Slide. At least I assume it is. Whenever I've used Pheromosa, it's able to survive at least one Rock Slide. So, you know, it definitely has the opportunity to deal some big damage here, and Ethan's going to want to have to deal with that. So Matt deciding Butterfree's too important, I can't let it go down to a Rock Slide right here. He decides to bring in Mimikyu, which we haven't seen yet. So the Rock Slide goes ahead, it connects with both Pokemon. It's going to deal decent damage to Pheromosa, around 50%, and it also breaks Mimikyu's Disguise, which is really important because breaking that Disguise does mean that you're going to have a better chance of KOing it later. Now, unfortunately for Matt, Pheromosa did flinch to the Rock Slide, which is really, really big because it means it wasn't able to fire off an attack. So that's a 30% chance. You never want to play around with those. Like, that's just unfortunate. And there's a reason, you know, we say where there's a Rock Slide, there's a way. Garchomp was able to buy a free turn there and really set Ethan up in a good position for this game. Now, he does have... Oh, and so Matt goes ahead, forfeits, just wants to reset, go into Game 3. So in that game, while I do think Ethan played well, that flinch definitely helped him out a lot. It did prevent a KO coming in from the Pheromosa, which was certainly a helpful thing to have. But he did set himself up well by getting his Garchomp in and denying his opponent setting Tailwind to make sure he maintains the speed advantage, which was obviously very important. If you don't move before Pheromosa, you can't flinch it with Rock Slide. So keeping the speed advantage definitely paid off in that regard as well. Now, it is a little unfortunate we didn't get to see what Mimikyu was trying to do or what Mimikyu wanted to do. And I imagine that's part of what was going through Matt's mind when he forfeited. He was like, you know what, it's 2-on-4. Maybe I could come back, but I'm going to have to give away a lot of information. My chances are better if I just go into Game 3 and I keep that information close to my chest to figure out how to deal with what Ethan has. So Matt, pretty confident in what he wants. He's already locked in. I imagine he has a pretty solid gameplay. He knows what he wants to do. And Ethan taking his time, figuring out, you know, exactly what it is that I need to do to take care of all the threats Matt has on his team. Alright, and so here we go. We're going to see this turn 0, see what each of these trainers think is going to be the key to winning with their leads. Now, this is Game 3 of an elimination tournament, so this is do or die time for both players. They're both going to be trying to make the best play. Obviously, they've been trying to make the best play that they can, but they both definitely want to win, take home the win right here. So Ethan deciding, you know, Garchomp was really threatening. Why don't I lead with it rather than switching in? Matt deciding to switch it up a little bit as well, going with the Pheromosa first rather than the Butterfree. So, you know, he does know that Rock Slide only deals about 50% if you avoid the flinch, and you do have a better chance to avoid the flinch than to be flinched. If you avoid the flinch and you're able to deal damage with Pheromosa, that could be a good way to go. Persian, again, slower than the opposing Salazzle, so it can't fake out. So Persian does get flinched by the fake out as Ethan goes ahead and he just earthquakes his own Persian. He doesn't even care. Let's just deal damage to that Salazzle, get it off the field, and that did deal a respectable amount to the Pheromosa, who goes for a high jump kick into the Garchomp slot, deals a massive amount of damage, you know, getting the one-hit KO right there. And that is going to be able to pick up a Beast Boost for Pheromosa, which is going to be huge. So both players traded a KO. Ethan got quite a bit more damage onto that Pheromosa than was taken by his Persian. However, Pheromosa's in a very, very threatening position with that +1 attack. So we do see Garchomp come in, and Garchomp obviously is going to be threatening the Tapu Koko with a Z ground, and Pheromosa is, again, threatening the Persian because it could just fire off a high jump kick and just delete Persian from the field. So we'll have to see what it is Ethan does to respond here. Honestly, I don't know if a +1 high jump kick would even be enough. Like, maybe it's enough to pick up the KO on Tapu Koko. Sure, it's a resisted hit, but it is coming from a very, very high base power attack into a relatively squishy resisted hit. Although maybe we have a better idea for the amount of bulk on this Tapu Koko after the survival it had last game. So we'll see what it is Matt decides to do. Ethan does decide he wants to protect his Tapu Koko. He doesn't want to take too much damage right now, as the high jump kick goes into the Salamence slot, and that deals more than 50% to Salamence, which is going to be a resisted hit. So that's a really, really offensive Pheromosa. It's such a tough Pokemon to play against because it can deal so much damage, and it has so many options. So one more high jump kick into Pheromosa, or into Persian, or shoot, not into Persian, into Salamence, will be enough to pick up the KO. And that Z ground into the Protect on Tapu Koko still dealt, just shy of 50% damage. So one thing that is good to know here is that it's quite likely that Matt can pick and choose who he KOs. His Garchomp will be faster than Salamence, be able to pick up the KO with the Dragon Claw if he has it. And Pheromosa able to deal a lot of damage. Look how much it did to Salamence. The damage roll is going to be similar into the Tapu Koko. So Ethan deciding he wants to protect that Salamence, he wants to preserve, Intimidate, wants to get it on one more time, goes ahead, switches it out, and the high jump kick goes into the into what was the Tapu Koko slot, or goes into Tapu Koko to pick up the KO there. Now we do see Salamence come back in. It does get another Intimidate off on both of these Pokemon, so that's going to put Garchomp at -2. We have seen it does have Dragon Claw, though. It's going to depend how much damage Dragon Claw can do to this Salamence at -2. If it's enough to pick up the KO, that's going to pretty solidly put Matt in a strong position. However, if it's not, then Ethan does have the opportunity to KO the Salamence and maybe get some stuff done with Persian. Although both of his Pokemon are at low HP, so this could be a tough one. Matt decides he wants to protect his Garchomp. As Ethan goes ahead, he fakes out into the Pheromosa and goes for a Bulldoze. So Bulldoze is going to lower the speed of both of the two Pokemon that were just hit by it, and it does activate the Berry for Persian. So that's actually a pretty interesting play. He doesn't pick up the KO on Pheromosa, which I'm sure he wanted to get done, but he is able to slow down the Pheromosa. So now it's possible that Salamence will be faster than Pheromosa to be able to finish it off this turn. And it does give him a chance to get Persian's health back up, which obviously is very important. So this Dragon Claw goes into Salamence, and it is enough to pick up the KO. So that's going to be the game. As long as his high jump kick connects, Matt is going to take the game, take the KO off of this Persian, and Matt will be advancing into the top 4. So very well played by Matt there. Really well done using that Pheromosa to just deal a ton of damage. Even on resisted hits, it did a massive amount of damage to all of Ethan's Pokemon, and unfortunately Ethan was unable to overcome that. So very, very well played, best of 3. That was a lot of fun to watch. Nothing's more exciting to me than going to game 3, because that's when the players have figured out what their opponents got, most of what the tricks are up their sleeve, and then they're going to have to execute their game plan to the best of their abilities. So congratulations to Matt. We'll be seeing him later on in the top 4 match. And congratulations to Ethan. That's a great run, making top 8. In these Kansas City events, there are actually a decent number of good players showing up. So it's a good showing. and I do believe he'll be taking some CP home with him for his efforts today.